It was a chilly Wednesday night in November when I decided to grab a late-night snack from my local McDonald's on Main Street, just a few blocks from my apartment. I'd been working on a tight deadline and needed a break. The place was nearly empty, save for a couple of quiet tables and a few staff members who seemed more interested in their phones than in serving customers. The familiar scent of fries and burgers filled the air, blending with the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional chime of the drive-through bell. Little did I know, this mundane outing would soon turn into a chilling encounter. I placed my usual order, 2 Big Macs, a medium fries, and a Coke, and took a seat near the counter while waiting. The staff behind the counter, though polite, seemed unusually distracted. The cashier, a young man with a name tag that read Chris, mumbled something about a special order and went to the back. I didn't think much of it at first. Fast food places can have off nights. But as the minutes ticked by, I noticed a peculiar tension in the air, something just slightly off about the way the staff kept glancing nervously at each other. While waiting, I spotted a man in a McDonald's uniform who I didn't recall seeing before. He was older, with a grim expression and a habit of peering into the back room every few minutes. He didn't interact with the customers and seemed out of place among the younger, more casual staff. I could hear him muttering to himself, and occasionally, he would glance in my direction. His unsettling presence began to make me uneasy, though I couldn't pinpoint exactly why. As I glanced at the clock, it had been over 20 minutes since I'd placed my order. I noticed that Chris had disappeared from the counter, and the older man was now behind the register. He shuffled through the receipts and appeared agitated, muttering about something not being right. When he finally handed me my bag, it felt unusually light. I didn't think much of it until I got home and found that my order was incomplete. No Big Macs, just the fries and Coke. I decided to call the store to get it sorted out. When I called, the phone rang several times before someone finally answered. It was Chris, sounding tired and a bit out of breath. I explained the situation, but he seemed confused and said there had been no order under my name that night. When I pressed him, he hesitated before saying he'd check with the manager and call me back. That was the last I heard from him. The whole experience left me feeling uneasy, like something wasn't right, but I couldn't quite figure out what. The next morning, I drove back to the McDonald's to address the issue in person. When I arrived, the store was oddly quiet, with no sign of the previous night's staff. The usual breakfast rush was missing, and the place felt eerily still. I asked the new employees about Chris and the older man, but they seemed bewildered and told me they hadn't worked the night before. The manager, who looked equally confused, said they'd checked the records but had no clue about the missing order or the strange staff members. I decided to dig deeper and asked to see the video footage from the night before. The manager agreed, but warned me that the footage might not be very clear. As we watched, I was startled to see that the footage showed no sign of me entering the store or placing an order. The timestamps were all wrong, and the footage seemed to skip at random intervals. It was as if my visit had been erased from the records. The manager looked troubled and promised to investigate further, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister was unfolding. Later that evening, the manager called me with an update. They had found something unsettling on the footage. The older man I had seen was caught on tape sneaking into a restricted area of the store, followed by Chris. They were seen talking and then entering a room that was supposed to be off limits. The footage was grainy, but there were unmistakable signs of tampering. The manager suggested I be careful and assured me they would involve the authorities. A few nights later, I returned to the McDonald's, more out of curiosity than hunger. To my surprise, Chris was back on the shift. He looked even more disheveled than before. When he saw me, he paled and quickly averted his gaze. I tried to approach him, but he seemed to avoid any conversation. I noticed that the older man was no longer around, and the atmosphere in the store felt more relaxed, but the unease lingered. Chris's behavior made me question whether he knew more than he was letting on. In the days following, I learned that there had been several complaints about strange behavior and missing orders at this McDonald's branch. Some reports mentioned a hidden room behind the kitchen, accessible only to a few. The details were sketchy, but I began to wonder if there was something deeply wrong going on behind the scenes. I began to investigate more, digging into employee records and store policies, trying to piece together what might be happening. One evening, after much persistence, I managed to sneak into the store after hours. The building was silent and dark, save for a faint light flickering from the back room. I followed it cautiously and found the door to the restricted area slightly ajar. Peeking inside, I saw an array of documents and old uniforms, along with a disturbing collection of photographs of various people, some of whom I recognized as previous customers. The chilling realization hit me. I had stumbled upon a hidden operation within the store. I reported everything to the authorities, who conducted a thorough investigation. The store was shut down, and several employees were questioned. It turned out that there was a hidden agenda involving illegal activities and tracking of customers, orchestrated by the disturbed staff. Chris and the older man were arrested, and the store was eventually closed for good. Though justice was served, the haunting experience left me with a lingering sense of dread. The thought that something so sinister could be hidden behind the familiar facade of a fast food restaurant still chills me to the bone. Working the night shift at the McDonald's in Tacoma, Washington, seemed like a routine job, just another part of daily life. The store, located in a quiet neighborhood, had a regular clientele of night shift workers and college students. I was new there, doing the midnight to 6 shift, trying to get used to the routine of cleaning, restocking, and serving customers. That night, the air was colder than usual, and the street seemed deserted, as if the world had slowed down. The sound of ice being crushed and the fluorescent lights created a sterile, monotonous environment. Nothing could prepare me for what was coming. My co-worker Dave had also started working there recently, just like me. He was a reserved type, rarely talking about his life outside of work. He always seemed a little out of sync, as if he was constantly distracted. There was something unsettling about him, an undercurrent that something was off. Sometimes I'd hear him muttering to himself, especially during the long hours. His presence was unusually discomforting, and the feeling that he was hiding something disturbing grew stronger each day. The night deliveries at McDonald's had always been a normal part of the job, but that night something felt off. The delivery truck arrived later than usual, and the driver, a weary and evasive man, seemed rushed and restless. As we unloaded the boxes, I noticed some were marked with different labels, with urgent written in a hasty script. While helping to unload, I saw Dave being more attentive than usual, inspecting each box with a jittery look, as if he was searching for something specific. The atmosphere shifted abruptly as we began to clean and restock the store. The radio, which usually played soft music, started emitting strange static, as if it was picking up some unknown transmission. Dave was agitated, switching stations every few minutes, trying to stay calm. There was something eerie in the air, a growing sensation that we were being watched. The sight of a shadow in one of the windows gave me chills, but when I looked outside, there was no one there. Around 2 in the morning, a customer walked into the store. He was dressed sloppily with a hood partially hiding his face. He only ordered a black coffee and seemed uninterested in chatting. There was something unsettling about the way he scanned the store, as if he was assessing every detail. The customer's behavior made me and Dave exchange worried glances. There was a sense that this customer was not just a passing night owl, but someone with unknown intentions. That night, the discomfort grew. The security cameras started malfunctioning, showing distorted and cut images, as if they were being tampered with. Dave seemed increasingly nervous, and the environment around us felt more oppressive. I began to notice small things out of place, misplaced items, flickering lights, and a repetitive noise coming from the storage area. The atmosphere was thick with an inexplicable tension that left me uneasy and worried about what might be happening. Hours passed slowly, and the situation only worsened. Dave began acting oddly, disappearing for long stretches and returning with a dark, brooding expression. His behavior became more erratic and frightening. When I went to the storage room to look for something, I found one of the boxes open and empty, but the worst part was the note inside. "I'm watching you." The feeling of being watched became overwhelming, and I knew I had to find a way out of there quickly. I tried to escape, claiming I needed a break, and stepped outside to the parking lot, but to my surprise, the car was gone. Panic set in as I realized I was trapped at the location with someone who seemed to be playing a macabre game. The fear intensified when the store lights started flickering and a strange sound echoed through the halls. The sense that something terrible was about to happen became almost unbearable, and I knew I had to find a way out as quickly as possible. Desperate, I tried calling the police, but the calls couldn't go through. There was strange interference on the lines. The only option left was to find an alternative exit. As I explored the storage and back areas, I discovered locked doors and blocked cabinets, as if someone was trying to keep me trapped. The claustrophobic feeling grew with each passing minute, and the fear of being caught by Dave or someone even more sinister was consuming me. While desperately searching for a way out, I found a hidden room behind a shelf of products. What I saw inside was horrifying. Several photos and notes about me and other employees, clear evidence that someone had been monitoring our every move. Among the items was a box with a handwritten message. "You're in my game now." The shock and confusion were overwhelming, and I knew I had to get out as fast as possible. When I decided to confront the situation, I found Dave in the hallway. He had a cold, threatening expression and seemed to know exactly where I was and what I had discovered. The confrontation was tense, and he revealed that he had been spying on the employees and planning something terrible. The threat was clear and immediate, and I had to use all my strength and courage to try to escape. Facing a series of obstacles and challenges that put my life at risk, I managed to escape the store and called the police, but when they arrived, Dave had disappeared. The store was in perfect condition, as if nothing had happened. However, the feeling of terror lingered, and I couldn't find a convincing explanation for what had occurred. The sense that something sinister was still going on never fully left me, and the fear that Dave or another pursuer might return continued to haunt my thoughts, leaving me in a constant state of vigilance. It was around 1 a.m. on a quiet Saturday when I felt the urge for a Big Mac. Living in the outskirts of Toronto, my usual McDonald's was a 24-hour location not too far from my place. I'd just finished watching a horror flick at home, so a late-night drive seemed like the perfect way to wrap up the evening. The streets were empty, save for a few scattered cars, and the drive-through line was short. Little did I know, this routine craving would lead me to one of the most unsettling experiences of my life. When I pulled up to the drive-through window, the young employee, who looked no older than 20, seemed unusually distant. His eyes, half hidden under a baseball cap, lacked the usual friendliness. He took my order without much enthusiasm and disappeared into the back, leaving me waiting longer than usual. I glanced around, noticing how quiet the area was, with only the dim lights from the restaurant and a few scattered street lamps illuminating the scene. After what felt like an eternity, he returned with my bag. I noticed immediately that my fries were missing, and the Big Mac looked oddly different. The bun was slightly askew, and the sandwich had an unfamiliar smell. I mentioned the missing fries and pointed out the sandwich issue, but he just nodded curtly and told me to wait while he fixed it. There was something unsettling about his lack of concern or apology. As I waited, the employee reappeared, this time with an awkward smile. He handed me a new bag and assured me that everything was correct now. There was an unusual rigidity in his smile, as if he were forcing himself to be pleasant. I tried to brush it off, telling myself he was just tired from working the night shift. But as I drove off, a nagging feeling in the back of my mind made me uneasy. As I began eating, I noticed the same strange smell from the sandwich. The fries, though present, tasted off, almost like they had been reheated multiple times. My mind raced with questions. Was it just bad luck, or was something more sinister at play? I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, and my earlier enjoyment of the meal turned into discomfort. A few days later, I returned to the same McDonald's, hoping it was just a fluke. To my surprise, the same employee was working again. He approached me with an overly friendly demeanor and tried to engage in small talk, asking questions about my previous visit. I found his probing questions about my life and habits unsettling. It felt as though he was trying to learn more about me than a casual customer interaction warranted. As I paid for my meal and received my order, I noticed something strange in the bag. There was a small slip of paper, folded neatly, tucked beneath the fries. It was a handwritten note with a cryptic message. "You should have stayed away." My heart raced as I tried to make sense of it. It was either a sick prank or something more disturbing. I couldn't ignore the shiver that ran down my spine. Later that week, I saw a car parked near my house that I hadn't noticed before. It was a dark, nondescript sedan with heavily tinted windows. The vehicle remained there for hours, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Each time I glanced out of my window, the car was still there, but its occupants remained hidden. It was as if the car was waiting for me to come outside. One night after the unsettling car incident, I received a knock at my door. It was past midnight, and through the peephole, I saw no one. My heart pounded as I cautiously opened the door, finding nothing but a small box on the doorstep. Inside the box was a single McDonald's napkin with a message scrawled in black ink: "You can't run forever." My fear escalated, and I locked the door, wondering what kind of twisted game I was caught up in. The next day, I learned from local news that a similar McDonald's employee had gone missing, sparking a police investigation. The descriptions of the missing person matched the employee I had encountered. The news article mentioned disturbing details about his behavior and possible connections to other strange occurrences in the area. The coincidence felt too close for comfort, and I couldn't ignore the chill that ran through me. Driven by mounting fear, I decided to confront the manager of the McDonald's about my experiences. When I arrived, I was shocked to find that the store had been temporarily closed for renovations. The manager, however, was there and seemed visibly nervous when I described my encounters. He insisted that the employee had been let go due to behavioral issues, but offered no further details, leaving me with more questions than answers. As I drove away from the closed McDonald's, I noticed the same dark sedan following me at a distance. I sped up, making several turns in an attempt to lose it, but the car stayed on my tail. Finally, I lost sight of it and reached my home safely. Shaken, I decided to report everything to the police, but the case remained open with no new leads. The unsettling feeling never fully went away, and I remain haunted by the strange messages and the unknown motives behind them.